you everyone who's joining. We're gonna wait just another minute before we get going. Wait just another minute because I see the participant total still going up. All right, I think we've got some critical mass. I'm going to get going. Thank you for joining today for our second workshop. If you were at our first one today, this one is specifically for agents in CalWATRS. We will be going over some of the same things at the very beginning that we did in the first one, but I'll be quick about it. I'm trying not to assume that everyone attended both, but I know that there is a lot of overlap. So I'm going to go very quickly over generally joining CalWATRS, but then I'll quickly dive into the specifics of being an agent in the system and what that means, and especially how that may be a little bit different from our previous system. For this webinar, the main way to interact with us is to use the question and answer or Q&A feature. It should be at the bottom of your screen if your screen is configured like mine is. That button will let you put questions into the chat. I will ask though that at least at the beginning, let us, at least start the webinar, because I know people may be coming with questions preloaded. But give it just a minute to see if we get to or we answer your question and what we're already discussing. But we're definitely going to pause about halfway in and make sure that there's plenty of time for questions and answers. Additionally, I forgot to mention this in our previous webinar, but both the organization webinar we held earlier today and the webinar we're holding right now are being recorded. So they will be posted on our website. So if I go a little quick, or if you missed the previous one or know someone that is missing this one, it will be recorded and posted. All right, I'm going to jump right in. The first one before we get into anything, don't use your client's pins. So this is not the previous system. The pins do not give you access to just file their annual reports. The pins are actually migrating their relationship. So if you use your client's pin, you're literally taking over who your client is. We'll go over into that more in just a second. But just if you take away anything from this, is please don't use your client's pin. There's other ways to get access to their records in here. I'm going to jump out of that real quick and then I'm going to jump right into demonstrating a couple things in our system. Apologize, just switching screens real quick. Okay. So the first thing, just to really quickly point out where some good resources are, if you go to if you don't know where to find CalWATRS in the first place or CalWATRS resources, if you just go to our water board's main page, it is actually in this news bar, the first item that comes up. That will take you to our main CalWATRS page, which includes a link to where you actually log into CalWATRS and a link to our guidance materials. And towards the bottom of the page is a list of our workshops and webinars. This is the last of our workshops scheduled right now, and we do have in a couple days in office hours at the Sacramento County Farm Bureau, if you have time or able to attend that. There is likely to be other workshops and or office hours set up in January as well. We just don't have them on the schedule yet. So check in there if you want to see if anything new has been scheduled. I do want to make sure that people are aware of our guidance materials. Our resources page has been growing. There is both walkthroughs, so PDFs of how to do various things in the system. There's also videos on YouTube that have us explaining how to go through various things. I'll especially point out that filing annual reports, those are even chaptered so that you can go in and jump straight in the video to a specific part of the annual report. There is also a PDF of the same thing where it goes page by page and what needs to be filed on each page of the annual report. Especially, since most of you here should be agents, this is also a helpful place to point your clients to if they do need more information about the system. Joining the system, again, I'll be fairly brief about this, but just in case there are people here that have missed the overall how to start in the system, the first thing that people need to do, so this is the CalWATRS landing page, you need to, if you have not already created an account, the first thing you need to do is create an account. None of your credentials from RMS, our previous annual reporting system, will work in this system. So if you haven't already created an account, that is the place to start. Many of you are probably aware of the pins that were mailed out. They were mailed out in a couple different batches. One batch was for individuals and the others were for organizations. They all, they're used in different ways, but they all do similar things. They connect this account that you create in CalWATRS to what we knew about you in the legacy system. That's a little different whether you're an individual or an organization, because if it's an individual, it's very one-to-one. It connects who you were in our previous system to who you registered as in CalWATRS. If you're an organization, it links you to the organization itself. And I suggest if you want more details on that, once we post a recording of the previous webinar, to watch that from this morning, because I go into a lot of details about what it really means to use the system as an organization. The main thing, though, is to fill this out as you, because even if you're part of an organization, this is not where you put your organization information. This is you registering to be part of CalWATRS. And at the end of this here, you should select, if you're part of an organization, if you're going to join one, or if you're an individual. To be honest, though, even if you select the wrong thing here, you can still do either case when you actually get to log in. Again, I suggest watching the walkthrough from this morning. After you submit your account registration here, you will receive an email to the email you use to register this account that will let you set your password, and then you will need to set two-factor authentication. The two-factor authentication allows a few different methods. You only need to set up one. You can use an authenticator on a smartphone, or you can get a text or voice call to a phone number. And I highlight the voice call one because I know a lot of people, especially if you're helping clients, still may only have landlines or otherwise have issues even getting a text. So there is a call option using a phone number to authenticate. As long as they can hear an automated message that reads a code, you can use that code as your secondary authentication. That's the really quick where everyone starts with in CalWATRS. And so assuming that most people here have gotten past that, have registered an account, are at the point of have either started migrating or are, you have connected to themselves, hopefully, with who you were in our previous system. We'll talk, briefly about the how to do that. And then I'll go straight into the straight into adding yourself as agent. Because I think one of the main things that people are going to be going through this year is that in our previous system, you did not necessarily need to tell us that you were someone's agent. You often just could use their credentials and use, which unfortunately were also called pins, use their water ID and PIN to access their record and file their annual reports. These pins are not the same thing. So literally what pins do is they're just a link between what we know about you from our legacy system and your relationships to the water rights that in our system, which if you're an agent here, we should have seen you as agent on the records. That pin, it literally migrates those relationships from the legacy account to the account you created in CalWATRS. And this is very one-to-one again as an individual. If you're an organization, it's similar, except it instead just connects you to the legacy organization. But this is also the why of why you should not be using your client's PIN. I'll give you a quick demonstration there. So here is a little more details about PINs in connection with being an agent. So the way the new system works is that CalWATRS is meant for everyone to have their own access to the water rights they're related to. And that means that there's, on purpose, a different access point for agents versus clients. You're not imitating your clients to access CalWATRS. You are just yourself, whether you're an agent as an organization or an agent as an individual, you are yourself related to these water rights. So just as a quick example, we've got multiple owners, they're connected to their water rights, and then we have two agents here. One is connected to, for these water rights, and another agent is connected to another one. Just to show that, it's not all or nothing either. It's you can have an owner that for whatever reason has different agents connected to different other water rights. But here's, another way to see what that PIN actually does. So the PIN is connecting, in this case, this owner to these water rights as owner and connecting the agent as agent to more of these water rights. So, intentionally, this owner only sees their two water rights. The agent can see multiple water rights because they're, it's agnostic of who is the owner of those water rights. It's really about the relationship, and that's what that PIN connects together. But this is also why you cannot use your client's PIN, because if you do, it literally, in this case, if you put in that primary owner one's PIN under your own record, you're now both primary owner and agent for those water rights. And if you keep on putting people's PINs in, you're continuing to take over their water rights. And I want to make sure this doesn't come off as blame, because we probably could have explained this better in the letter. If anyone as a good line on a time machine. We're willing to take it because there's a lot of things we probably could have done differently. But definitely we maybe could have explained this better. At least at this point, though, understand that the pins are not what they were in RMS. They're not used to using your client's pin does not give you access to their records. It makes you them. So obviously don't do that. The other big piece of this is that if you, because I know this is a common use case as well for both small and large agents, meaning, whether you represent a couple water rights or hundreds of water rights, because the old system let you use the owner's credentials to file in reports for them, it really didn't ever force you to tell us you were their agent. So if you got your PIN as agent and put it in and you're not seeing water rights that you reported for in the past, it's because we were never explicitly told that you were their agent. Just because we've seen you file annual reports for someone in the past doesn't mean that we could assume that you were their agent and added that relationship. We need a change of ownership form, which it's a not just about ownership changes, it's also about adding or removing agents. We needed to have seen that in some time in the past to actually have you as agent on our records. And I'll show some examples of that in just a second, so people can see what it actually looks like on our side of the system. In fact, I'll just jump right into that. The point being that there, if you are not seeing the water rights that you expect to, it's most likely because you were never explicitly told that you were their agent. And so I'm gonna give you a really quick example of an agent. And I think you may even be on the call, that this is literally what staff see in our system. We see this list of water rights, and I know that, if I had a bigger screen, it'd go all the way. And with those relationships, I could see how this entity is related to these water rights. And in this case, it's as agent. This is the same thing that if you've looked up records in the past in ERIMs, you're able to see this is a publicly visible thing. So, again, if just because you filed water or annual reports for someone in the past, it did not automatically add this relationship to those water rights, especially because this just wasn't consolidated in a meaningful way in our previous system. So, if a different person in an organization was filing on behalf of that organization every year, there's just a lot of assumptions that we couldn't make to make that leap of who was or was not their agent. I will demonstrate ownership change form itself, because I think it's really helpful for people to see that, because it's the what of what most people probably need to do to make sure that you're able to see your client's record. It's relatively painless, and it's also something that we're prioritizing right now. So when we see those agent update records come in, we are prioritizing getting those put through. So we actually got it fairly quick now. We should be able to respond to it within a day or so to get you access to records. The another, just, if you wanted to see and again, I'm not trying to pick on anyone here, but this is literally what, staff can see in our system as far as migrations. It just let you know if you did migrate things incorrectly, we can reverse it, because we can see and hear what happened, and we can tell it to go back the other way. But just if you wanted to see an example of what it looks like when that migration goes wrong. So in this case, and again, I'm not picking on anyone, it's just a record I saw. This person was the agent for this water right and put in their client's PIN. How do I know? Because if I go in here, I can now see that the legacy version of them is the agent, and it now shows that they are also the primary owner. So that description of that taking over the person before. This is what happened here when they use their client's PIN instead of the PIN for themselves. It's also just not how the system's meant to be. You're meant to be able to see as many water rights as you need to as agent. That's why that relationship is there. I'm going to pause real quick because I just want to make sure and see if there's any questions there, because I know that that's been a big. I don't see any. Okay. Then I'm going to plunge ahead into how you use the pins. And this is, the main piece of this has been covered in other webinars, but I will just very briefly go over that. If you are an individual, the pins are put in. So let me imitate someone real quick. So for most folks, if you are in an or if you are an individual, so if you are just and side note, you could be an agent as an individual or an organization. It really doesn't matter. It's enabled to work for either case. Because I know there are folks that just as yourself help out people filing annual reports, and there's also organizations that do that. So it that also does not affect things. The point either way is that pins are meant to be used certain ways depending on who you are. If you are an individual, meaning that your name is the agent on record, not an organization, but you yourself, you would want to, after you create your account, put in your PIN through this migrate records form. When you put this in, it will show you, when you add this PIN here, it will show you the water rights that are associated with that PIN. It's likely, again, as agent, that you may not see all of them, given that most agents don't have a complete record with us just because of how the previous system works. So I advise at least starting with migrating yourself, and then following up with us if there's records that you haven't seen, or if you know that you were never officially the agent for these folks, to file the change of ownership, which I'll show in just a second. If you are an organization, you go slightly differently. You are going to go through the organization management tab. And let me actually grab one that is not associated with someone, so I can show you exactly what that looks like. Just 1 second. So if you are joining an organization, I'm just going to find one that isn't been used yet. But also, by the way,
Hey,
we're not.
Jeff, I just wanted to interrupt for a moment to let everybody know the Q&A feature was broken for a little bit, and we fixed it. So if you have questions you need to ask, the Q&A feature should be working now to ask them.
I thought that Q&A was eerily silent. Thank you. Okay. So a real quick demonstration of how pins are used as an organization. So when you come in, and this was the point of marking yourself as being part of an organization when you created your account, so that it gave you this flag. Even if you didn't select this, you can still go to your account settings here. You can also go to your account settings down at the bottom. They both go to the same place. If you go to organization management, when you are not joined to an organization yet, you will want to say, if you have a PIN, you have an existing organization from our legacy system. You want to say, yes, you do have a PIN. This is for the first person that joins. And when you join, um, one that so when you put this in here, it will show you it should hopefully show you the organization you're expecting. If it doesn't, please don't submit it. But if you got the letter, it should show you your organization. And when you click submit, it will automatically make you the administrator for that organization. If you have other people joining your organization, they go through it by searching for that organization. That PIN only works for the first person. The If you put in a search for your organization, you should be able to find it. If you can't find it, it means that you weren't an organization in our system. Um, again, if you never officially, I know there's also some folks that never submitted any ownership changes or changes of agent ever, but you've still been filing for people. In that case, we may not have a record of you. I'll show you that in just a second, but just so you know, if you have other people that also need to join your org, and again, we went into way more details about this morning. This is how you do that. They would search for it and ask to join it. Part of why I'm bringing this up is because I know some folks, before we sent out pins, made requests to join. They could see their organization here and they requested to join it. If you didn't have anyone that had already joined your organization, that request kind of went nowhere because it's waiting for someone to approve it. And if no one had joined the org yet, there's no one to approve it. We can fix that, obviously, but just in case that happened to you, that's basically what happened. You can, if you submit a request, you can, and then you later got a pin, you can cancel that request. If you go to the screen, you can say cancel and then instead go back, and it looks like right here, when you cancel it, you just need to refresh your screen. And then you can basically start again, go back to the organization management, and it will let you put in a pin again. In the case that you are a net new organization, or say that, maybe you never had filed anything officially with us in the past, but you've been helping people and you want to start off now as an organization, the place to do that is here, and you can create a net new organization in this case. There won't be anything tied to you when you start that, but you can, this is the where you can start a completely new organization. Once you do that, the next step would be to then file an ownership change, which I will switch to and then switch to a different account, and then I will show you exactly how you can add yourself as agent. So, and this is, again, regardless of whether you have existing records associated with you or not, you can always add more records as agent. So this is basically the same whether you're starting out from scratch with a new organization or you have an existing organization that has some records related to it as agent, but is missing others. What you want to do is when you're in the system, you want to go to online services. And by the way, side note, this is also how you can either file for or help your client file ownership changes as well. You can file ownership changes for your clients, or I mean, technically anyone. They don't have to be your client, but you can file on behalf of others. It will keep you on there as the person that filed that change request. One of the options that I'll show you is that you can just file as a neutral party. Basically, you're just you don't have any lasting relationship to this change. You're just helping others file this change. But I'm assuming most people here are going to want to say, I am the new agent. I'll also note, so what this form is doing is I'm already logged in as myself. So it's not asking who I am. It already knows who I am. Instead, it's asking what your relationship is. And in this case specifically, I'm logged in as a member of the State Water Board. And so when it makes this change, it will make the change as the State Water Board, which I'll show in just a second. You can also, if you're making changes for people you are already associated with, you can say, I am the current agent. Just know that if you say you are the current agent, it will filter records by water rights that it knows you are the agent for. So in this case, I am not shown as agent for anyone, and so nothing comes up. I won't ever be able to find any water rights here because I am not actually the current agent for anyone. Similar with if a primary owner is doing a change, it will only show them records that they are primary owner for. So most folks are probably going to say, I am the new agent. I'm just going to clear it just to make sure I'm not confusing it because I've been changing it so much. So starting with I am the new agent, there's two main ways to add the water right that you are going to make the change in. One is water right by water right, which you can do. And so because you're the new agent, it's now searching the whole system. It's not pre-sifting it for anything. It's just showing you all water rights. So when you start typing, you can see that it appears. When you click on it, it'll show you who owns that water right. If you want to add it to this request, you just click on it. You can continue to add more water rights. So if I'm going to go in here and now I'm just going to pick another one. And so you can see you could just keep adding to this list down here. You can add as many water rights with as many different owners into one request as you want. I know a lot of people have grouped these requests out, just letting you know that you can theoretically add hundreds of people into this if you needed to do a large ownership change request. The other part of this I want to show you, because this may be faster and more applicable, is that you can also search by the primary owner. So in this case, if I select them, it's going to pull up every water right that they have. And so, you can select all of them. And a quick way to select everything that an owner has is this little box in the corner here. So you can see that just added everything that Jackson Family Investments was associated with. So in this case, I'm just going to proceed with the one water right that I had here. Show you what the remaining part of the process looks like. It does ask you if you want to make other changes. We're assuming that most people are just adding themselves as agent. They're not making other changes, but you can theoretically make other changes if the primary owner also needs to be updated or other owners need to be updated at the same time. And then here's where you can see that it already knows who I am because I'm already part of the State Water Board. I'm logged in as a member of it. So you don't have to fill in the part of who you are. It just asks you to select then who in your organization is the primary contact for this change. It will search through whoever is associated with the org. If you're the only person, or if you're doing this as an individual, it'll just be yourself. It also lets you select different mailing and billing addresses if you need to. Selecting a billing address does not make you the bill receiver. That is in another step, because I know that is a particular concern for a lot of clients. They do not want to necessarily receive their clients' bills. So this just shows you a summary of what's being requested. So in this case, it's just adding the State Water Board as agent for this water right. This is where if you needed to, you could continue to add other relationships related to this change. This is where if you're going to make other changes, it does make sense to keep it in ownership grouping, meaning that, if you add other contacts here, it's going to add it to all water rights you've selected. So you probably want to, if you're going to make other changes, make sure you're only submitting requests for that particular owner. So, and this is the one I was flagging before, is that this explicitly then asks who, after this change, will be the mail receiver and the bill receiver for this water right. And they can be in any combination. The easiest or easiest might not be the right word. The most neutral thing to do is keep the primary owner as both. Because I know a lot of agents also just want to make sure you're able to get folks their annual reports filed, but maybe you're not the primary correspondence receiver for them. And in a lot of cases, I know agents are definitely not the bill receiver, but you are free to choose this as makes sense. Just know that if you select primary owner for both, that's basically the same as just saying keep things as they are. The only caveat to that would be is if they already have an agent, this will overwrite their existing agent. So, I know a lot of our records are out of date. There may be existing agents on the system or in our system that are, maybe inaccurate, but just be aware that this does overwrite previous owners as well. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. It does overwrite previous agents as well. There can only be one agent on a record. So it will, by default, if you're adding yourself as agent and there is an existing agent, it will remove that existing agent. The rest of the form is just, you can provide additional comments if you wish, and you can upload files. Most of that probably isn't applicable. And then at the very end of it, you just to sign the form, you just need to select this box and then retype your name exactly as you registered it. So I'm obviously not going to submit this. I'll also show you though where you can see, because you can pick these up later. So I'm going to save and exit this. I want to make sure people know exactly where you can then find this and other things. So a really quick where things are primer around here. And I'll do others in just a second, but for most forms, you're going to go to online services to start forms. So if you need to start new initial statements, new registrations, there's tabs for each of these things. Most of our changes are in the water right requests. And you can, so, definitely poke around in here, but then where are your records that you've already started? They are in my applications and requests. So similarly, these are broken up into the what of what you've asked for. In this case, I'm looking at the changes of ownership. And so you can see both draft and completed changes of ownership here. If you need to keep a record or keep track of whether an ownership change has gone through. So in this case, I'm just looking for that draft I started. I know it's going to be the last one. And just so you know, you can also withdraw requests. So if you've started something and then decide that you're not going to go through with it, you can withdraw them. This will basically erase it from our system. Some other wheres of where things are in the system. The home screen is your friend. That's always going to take you back to this landing page. Whether you are the owner or the agent, my water rights, which maybe we can update wording on here. It's really water rights I'm able to see for what that means. So in this case, and this will be similar to what most agents will see, you will not see your name in the primary owner because you are representing other folks. In this case, this is our public side state account where we help people file things. So it's very similar where we're basically a stateside agent. You'll see all the water rights you are listed as agent for, and you will see them by primary owner. You can search if you need to hone this down a little bit. Especially if you have a lot of people that you're agent for, this is a quick way to look at just records for that person. If you click on that record, it will take you to more information about it. This is also a place where you can quickly launch other things. So I'm directly in this record right now, and you can launch a lot of forms directly from this if you need to. It also gives a quick map of where this water right actually is. And another thing that this is pretty new is it also has all the documents that have been scanned in for this water right. Right now, for most water rights, that is usually their annual reports up to about 10-ish years ago. And then the key document summary. This is what in our previous system was that view documents link. And I'm highlighting this because I know a lot of clients often, especially if they've recently become primary owner, have not even seen their license. So this is where you can quickly get copies of their licenses for them. For riparian statements, this will be usually a copy of the initial statement that they filed. There's probably not a lot of other information for that. This is also where when our digitization process catches up, there'll be a lot more records here. So eventually, all our water right records, you'll be able to see their full history of documents in this section. But it's that's going to take a few years to fully catch up. So most water rights right now will have at least annual reports and these key documents. I'm going to go down and show really quickly where annual reports are. Let me actually mimic someone that has some. I want to make sure to give you a clear demonstration of what that looks like. So in this case, I'm mimicking a large Asian organization, large Asian organization. You can see just if you want to know what it looks like if you have a lot of members in your organization, um, you can manage your members here. This is also where you'll see the admins will see other people requesting to join. You can manage who's in here. The main thing to show you is what do annual reports look like. They're always launched from this My Annual Report tab. And you will see that they are broken up by type. This is something that we're working on matching with that overall water rights search where there will be an all tab so you can see everything in one place. And you can also search by owner or by other things like county if that helps you organize who you're filing for. That will be coming hopefully in the next couple weeks. Our contractor is working on implementing that right now, but for right now, you need to click on the tab for those particular things. Most people are, they're either going to have things in appropriate and registrations, or they're going to have records and statements. If you do have clients you're representing for groundwater recordations, this is where they are as well. So not a lot of, that doesn't apply to everyone in the state, but in case you need to know where those are, you just need to make sure you're clicking on the right tab. And in general, once you have the water right that you are interested in, you just need to say view all reports. And this shows you all the annual reports for this particular water right. You can amend any existing water annual report. And this is also where you're going to, this get used to this action is at the end of the table because that is how most things work in the system. This is where you can start, or if you can see this one's already in progress, this is where you can pick back up an annual report in progress. A note about amending older annual reports. I know some clients may be behind on annual reporting as well. You can resubmit any annual report on record here. By default, it goes back to, I believe, 2020. So if they have not filed any annual reports, if they're very late for their water right, they'll only have records available back to 2020. But in this case, because this is an older water right and they've been filing for a long time, records go back to when we started digitally accepting annual reporting. The big caveat though is if you amend an older report, it amends it with the format of the annual reports in our system. There's no ability to go back and file it using the form that it would have been back then. The main impact of this is if you're filing annual reports from 2020 or earlier, they are in, so at that time they were in calendar year, not in water year. Because our system can only have one annual report form in it, amending those is a little odd. And I'm working on some best practice tools for folks on amending things older than this. My general advice is that because you can only submit it in water year, you may need to file more than one, meaning that if you need to amend 2018 to fully amend 2018, you may also need to amend 2019, if that makes sense, if that's tracking for folks as far as covering all the different months in a water year. So I know that may not apply to a lot of people, but just since you all will be helping a lot of folks, I wanted to make sure to mention that nuance there. I'll also note, and I'm trying to think how to frame this without pointing too many fingers at myself. There are still quirks in the system. It is new. I know a lot of people that have been very active users in it sometimes find the system doing odd things. It is a new system. We don't intend it for it to do odd things, but it does, unfortunately. So definitely let us know. The bigger picture is that we have not at this point said that we are extending the deadline for annual reporting. It is at this point still the end of January. But we've also acknowledged that we're going to be flexible as far as, enforcement is going to be extremely lenient. Our main intent is to make sure that people have at least tried to get in the system and have been making an active effort, especially now that there is late fees for appropriative water rights. We are also looking, or at least I am looking at how to make sure that we can delay those for this year, because that also isn't fair for folks that are earnestly trying to get annual reports filed, especially for you agents that maybe have a lot of people that you have to file for. So, I'm also looking at how to make sure that we're extremely lenient with that. And the reason it's hard for me to give absolutes is there are people that just don't comply at all. And so it's hard to place a universal leniency on things when there may be real reasons to still not be so lenient with folks that really do not even attempt to comply with our new system. If you're here, you're not who we're looking at. And my goal personally is to just get annual reports filed for either yourself or for the people you represent. And so if you watch the videos that I've made of the annual reporting, I try to include advice on, some of these questions may not apply to everyone. If it doesn't make sense and it's not required, move on. In general, number one goal is to get annual reports filed with as much valid information as you can. At worst, say there may be a piece of information that you're not 100% about. If you need to, in doubt, file the annual report and amend it later, because there's no penalty for amending annual reports after the deadline. So as long as a version of it is filed before the deadline, that's at least goal one. On top of that, we do recognize that there are, especially since a lot of you need to be added as agent to even access these records, that has become a barrier. So, while I can't say that we've extended the deadline, I am saying that, the board is aware of the issue, our enforcement teams are aware of the issue, and they've already, said that they're going to be lenient with this year. So,
hey, Jeff, we do have some questions now.
Yeah.
Some of them have been answered, but I think that they were worth also answering live.
Yeah.
So if you want to jump in there with the last 10 minutes or so, I think that'd be helpful.
Sarah, definitely. We've just caught up recently with agent additions. Hopefully you've seen those go through. I believe I've personally gotten a lot of yours through, but if not, we are speeding up significantly on agent additions. Um, so I am literally looking in the background. As soon as I get off this meeting, I will make sure that you aren't waiting on yours. In general, though, for folks that are adding add agent requests, we've already set up a process internally to expedite those. I know there are also other ownership changes that are necessary to keep records going, but we recognize that the highest volume ones right now are going to be ad agents, so we are speeding up significantly on that. The Okay. The question about when you're trying to add an organization and it's giving you an error, what most likely happened there is that you migrated records to yourself as an individual, and then you tried to add the organization. So, and again, I'm not trying to point blame because I think we failed a little bit on some of our instructions. We could have been a little clearer. The short answer is if you send us a help case, and you may have already sent us a help case, and I apologize that we are behind on that, though catching up rapidly on our help cases. We basically need to unassociate you as an individual and reassociate you as a organization, because you cannot have records associated with yourself both as an individual and as an organization. If there is a reason why that is complicated, there's other ways that we can facilitate those things and help you get set up. There's more complicated things from this morning that we can help do to make more complicated cases work in the system. So the short answer is unfortunately you may have migrated records incorrectly, but we can correct it. So James, if you are a employee of a water agency, you should be joined as an employee. And I say should because what makes this hard is that our previous system didn't have these organization features. So I know there are cases, and you may have gotten a letter with a PIN as an individual because you were marked on the record explicitly as the agent for your organization. And basically, you don't have to do that anymore. You are welcome. People are free to access records however they need to. But what may have happened is that you, as yourself, in our previous system, were listed as agent and got a PIN for that, when in reality, now you can just join the organization and access the organization records that way. So again, we can correct that. We just need to know that you want that to be corrected and you'd rather access it as the organization, not as yourself, the agent, which may have been listed in the previous system. Hector, your question, if we have not received a letter with a PIN, our organization is coming to search, how do we get added? That is where, and if you want us to do a sanity check of do we see you in the system, we can help do that from our side. But that is where the part where I described adding a net new organization, that is what you would do. And it may be the case that your organization was never officially an agent for anyone in the system, which in that case, your organization would not come up in a search. So especially if you did not get a PIN, that may be the likely thing. So what I would do is go in and create a new organization and then file that change of ownership / agent form to add yourself as agent to the records you need to be able to interact with. Similar to what was asked before, though, if you've already started filing things as an individual, though, that does conflict. So we have ways of correcting it, but basically it's you can only be an individual or an organization. You can't be, or part of an organization. You can't be both at the same time. We have ways of correcting it. We just need to know how to, what you need to see, and we'll help it make that way. Sean, so I will say this is one of those things that can be a quirk of the system. Look at how much time we have left. Basically, if you click on the view notifications, it should tell you in the notifications breakdown which records it thinks are late. I have seen cases where it thinks a record's late and it's not, especially if if ownership has changed recently. I do know there's cases where, if the ownership changed after the last annual reporting deadline and the previous owner didn't file annual reports, the new owner isn't responsible for those previous owners' late annual reports, but the system sometimes is still giving that flag. So the basic thing is look at the view notifications, try to see if it can tell you which record it is that's being flagged as late. There's also cases where there's more gray areas like groundwater recordations where I don't know if late is really the right word. So just consider those with a grain of salt. If you're seeing those, you have late in reports, it is for previous water right years. It is not for it. You will not see this if the only water rights, only annual reports being expected are for this reporting season. So the system thinks there's water rights from previous years that your clients are missing. Question, Martin, about filing annual report as an agent. You have to have, sorry, I didn't mean to confuse people with the change of ownership form. There are some forms like the initial statement and the change of ownership where you don't have to have a relationship to it to help someone file it. And so this is what in some forms in the past were called just friends and family. You can help people file forms. The one caveat is there is not currently a way to help people file annual reports with that, because the way the system is built, we need to know that you have some relationship with that record to file annual reports on it. I know that sometimes itself is hard. That was a nice part of the previous system, even though it was very insecure, anyone could file an annual report for anybody else. So I won't have anything for this year, but I am looking at for next year how people can just ask someone to help them file an annual report without explicitly being an agent. For this year, though, if you are helping someone file an annual report, you either need to help them through the account they created themselves, meaning literally being on a computer with somebody helping them, or you need to be listed as agent for them. Barbara, I'm not 100% on your question. So if you received someone else's PIN information, I would not enter that, if I'm reading that question correctly. Does the owner need to approve the assignment of agent? So one of the things is that, yes, but there's nothing in the form that asks for that approval. So we take it on face value that if you are submitting to us that you are the agent, that you are doing so with the knowledge of the owner. The owner can contest if they receive notification that an agent has been added and they do not agree to it, they can contest it with us and the agent can be removed. So the form itself does not include an explicit checkbox, a place for them to approve it. Think about the past. These were just PDFs in the past that we got sent. We have to accept them at face value that you have the authority to be asking for what you're asking for. And then the last one, there's a water right associated with my PIN that shouldn't be. We can help trace that down. We can look at the history of that and try to figure out the why of that. I mean, that's the short answer. If you know, there's a lot of reasons why it could or could not be. The other thing that is people, yeah, again, if I had that time machine, the biggest difference between what pins were in our previous system, what they are now, is pins in the previous system were water right by water right. Pins in CalWATRS are for the entire party. So whether that party has 1 or 100 water rights, that pin will migrate all of them. So for whatever reason, you were associated with a record, whether you knew it or not. I would also look at the status of that record, because if you're associated with like an inactive statement, a lot of people inactivated statements, and so you probably haven't filed anything with that because you don't file any reports on inactive statements. It's still on our record, so it may be also something that, depending on the status, is something that is associated with you, but it's really not doing anything, if that makes sense. We could always help troubleshoot it though and figure out the why of why that got associated with you. I know we're right at time. So if you have not received a PIN yet, we can help search that for you, but it may be that we didn't know that you were their agent. If we didn't know that you were their agent, or if you never were anything official in our system, you would not have gotten a PIN. If you only filed on behalf of people in the past using their login, we might not have ever known that you were their agent. Similarly, we only hard copy mailed this. We did not email any of these to people. So it also may have gotten lost. So we could definitely also look it up. Most of our staff are able to look up pins for people. So if you did not receive a letter, please send us a help request and we will get you the pin to help you get connected. We can, in a lot of cases too, often just get you connected directly in our system. As long as you have a CalWATRS account created, which is the start of everything, we can then, once you have that account, we can then connect things to it. So, where can we help? We don't find your letter. Again, just contact us. Yeah, I know that some especially large organizations, that who things got mailed to may be nebulous, and it may have gone into a organizational black hole. Again, just contact us. We can always look up pins for people. And we'll always make sure that a lot of times we can tell by email or other things if you are legitimately part of an organization. So we'll use our best judgment, but we can quickly look up organization pins and get people connected to the accounts we need to get connected to. All right, I want to thank everyone for their time today. Again, these are recorded, and the one from this morning was recorded if you want to go back and watch them or provide them for other people. And I also do want to highlight our resources page. We do want people to, especially if you're working with clients that have questions, please point them there first before creating, obviously we want people to reach out to us at the helpline. We are fairly behind in our help cases right now though, so as much as you can use our resources page to research some questions before that, the better. But otherwise we are catching up quickly, and I really appreciate everyone's time. I also really appreciate everyone hanging in there with us with this new system. It's slowly but surely improving, so I appreciate everyone's patience. Thanks everyone.